And I think if he got that New England job, how about an Arthur Smith and Mike Vrabel reunion? Okay, and you know what I think that'd be the perfect situation for? A bridge and a drafted player. Because as we've watched Jordan Love, I kind of wonder if the Jordan Love thing's going to change the way people. I'm not saying he's the first guy, but Mahomes sat a while. Okay, draft and stash, man. Game day is the perfect pizza day. So make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. Order online during our Pizza pregame 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day Sunday. To have your NFL game day covered, choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. It's a pizza win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends, order your Little Caesars, and enjoy during the games. And I think people are really confused. Well, they're not really confused. I think two things can be true. You can love Mike Vrabel, and I would hire him in a heartbeat, and I'd love to play for the guy. And then you can also acknowledge that there were some issues on his staff that, maybe took too long to take care of. There were some offensive struggles during his tenure that are hard to explain away. I think, the offensive coordinator issue lingered a little longer than it should have. It was really hard to replace Arthur. I also think the Cincinnati playoff game was enormous. You talk about things that people don't get over. You have home field advantage, and you've been knocking at the door, and you lose that game. And you lose that game because of the quarterback, 19-16. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And then over the next couple of years, you have Tannehill's injuries. You obviously have the trade of A.J. Brown. You have Byard this year. It just felt like it was one thing at a time. And over the last couple of years, you've seen them, now down, if you're a Titans fan and you're waking up in September to watch a game of next year, you're not going to have Vrabel, you're not going to have Derrick Henry, you're not going to have Tannehill, you're not going to have Byard. Lewan retired a couple years ago. Like a lot of guys that, and this is how it happens in the NFL. It happens fast, and it happens before you even know it's happening. It's happening before you know it's happening. And, the band gets broken up. And it's unfortunate because it was really fun to watch this Vrabel era. If it felt like it was just getting started for me. And maybe that's just because I enjoy watching Mike coach so much. And I enjoy watching him get out of these disadvantageous spots. I thought, week 18 is a microcosm of, who he is as a coach. But the ceiling on that operation seemed to struggle. That ceiling seemed to linger kind of lower than you wanted it to be. Now the floor, although you look at the record and say, fuck, they got killed in their division the last couple of years. They've gone on a really bad stretch, quiet as kept. But he's always seemed to be a crisis manager with personnel, with the opponents they're facing, with the spot they're in. They just don't give a shit. They line up and play football. And as a guy who, I don't think of myself as old NFL. I think of Vrabel as like old NFL. I think of one of the guys that was here for the turn, right? Like I was one of the few that got to see the new NFL and the old NFL. When I came in the league, there were a bunch of guys like Mike Vrabel. And I gravitate to those people. They were leaders for me. There was something about those people that reminded me of my dad. Like they've seen some shit. They've been through some shit. So I gravitate to a guy like Mike Vrabel. I think it's really cool to see guys from that era coaching. That's why I love Dan Campbell. That's why I love seeing players now, like somebody like D'Amico Ryan's getting a shot because he didn't just play, he played before the CBA changed everything. Back when guys had two-a-days. I sound like I'm that guy walking through the snow on the way to school, but it was a fucking different deal. And so I love those guys, and I love Mike Vrabel. But I guess it was time for a change. It is shocking for some people when you look at the fact that they were deep in the playoffs consecutive years, like 2 years ago. But as I laid it out, there have been some things that have happened that have just kind of compounded and snowballed. And now, if you're Amy Adams Strunk, you're thinking, what do I have to do? Well, there's some things that I'd like to change internally if I had to guess. And, I don't know that it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to fire Vrabel, but a lot of times there are ultimatums. And Vrabel strikes me as a guy, and this is one of the reasons I love him. He's a guy that's like, hey, fuck your ultimatum. I want to do things my way. And that can hurt guys for sure. And he came up in a school of Bill Belichick where Bill's buying the groceries and cooking dinner and that sort of thing. And I don't know how much control of the personnel Vrabel wanted, and I don't know if the change in GM over the last couple of years with Robinson on the way out and Rand Carthen, who I think is awesome, was in the building with me in St. Louis. He's a quality dude. He's been on the show, but sometimes groups don't click, and sometimes you can't figure out how to, delegate. And I think for an owner, I would imagine that meeting detailed some things that she wanted changed. And I think Vrabel's probably in a position of leverage where you think about some coaches getting fired. Yeah, I'll do whatever you need me to do, but not Mike Vrabel. He's got other jobs he could get. And I think if I was somebody hiring, I would look long and hard at Mike Vrabel. Now, obviously, everybody's excited about the New England prospect, and I think it fit wonderfully. I think he'd be great. He'd bring a new age version of Bill to town. He's one of the few coaches, don't forget, that's left that nest and succeeded. And I think part of it is because he's been his own fucking guy. Okay? And, too many times guys try too hard to be Bill. You hear stories about Josh in New England. You hear stories about Josh in Vegas. You hear stories about former coaches going somewhere else and trying to be Bill and doing things that just be yourself. And I think Vrabel was able to do that and also infuse some of that New England culture without saying outwardly, hey, we're going to be New England. Because guys don't want to fucking hear that. They want to be their team. Now, when he went up for that Ring of Honor induction, I think he ruffled some feathers when he said, enjoy this. It's not like this everywhere. So if I am Mike Vrabel, and I don't like the situation around me when it comes to what are my responsibilities now as opposed to a couple years ago. If I don't think we're in a real good place organizationally, I don't think that team's very talented right now. I think he actually hid their floor really well, as he does any given Sunday. He did it on a macro level, even considering how bad they've been. I think I have job opportunities. I'm not fucking answering to ultimatums, okay? Now, I don't know how much personnel control somebody's going to cede to him somewhere else. And I certainly don't know if that place is New England. Just because Bill did it for a long time doesn't mean they want to let that happen again. You almost feel like they'd want to go the opposite way and say, well, we can't have somebody in here who's trying to pull a Parcells. But I think you have leverage if you're Mike Vrabel, more than most coaches getting fired, because I see paths to other places. And when you listen to, first off, the Amy Adams Strunk video today, which is curious on a lot of levels. Number one, she's not actually answering to reporters. She sends somebody else to do that. Number two, the very shooting of that video, which seemed very state TV. That video looked to me like state TV. And it was cut like the set screamed, I tweeted this earlier, the set screamed, I just fired somebody. But what it really screamed, somebody messaged me, was like 1985 Moscow. Mm-hmm. Or like
East Germany.
Yeah, like East Germany, right west of the wall. Right? Did I get that right geographically? Okay. It's west of the wall. Okay.
East of the wall.
East of the wall in East Germany. See, that's why I'm fucked up. East Germany. See, that's why I asked you, historian. But it reminded me of like the way they were cutting it, the way they were cutting from shot to shot. Me and Nolan watched it, and we had the same fucking text message that we sent at the same time. He sent the video at the same time as I sent the video, and then we sent the same follow-up, which is this set is atrocious. It looks like they called Vrabel in, Miss Amy fired him, and they were like, where do you want to do the interview? And she was like, we should do it right here in the HR room. We don't need any props. We don't.
I also wonder what the casting looked like to be like the interviewer. Like, I had when guys like pulling straws, like,
But
please God, no.
that guy's obviously their PR guy and everything, and I'm sure he's
Yeah,
like, "Fuck, look what I got to do right now." But I got to
right.
put on this Titans Q-zip. Anybody got a Titans helmet we can just stick on the? It looks like this is not a place you usually do interviews, and maybe it wasn't fitting to do this interview in front of a Titans backdrop or something. But it just looked like they were like, "Fuck it, we're gonna do the interview where we fired him. Move some chairs out of the way. Let's do it right here. Fuck it, we'll do it live." But the cuts were crazy. They were like, check it out with Steve Brule. It was like, it was public access TV. It was crazy. The production value on this thing wasn't great now. And I got no opinion on the owner. I don't know owners like fan bases know owners. So you tell me. But I'm listening to her talk, and the number one question that was asked early on, and first off, these questions are all very leading questions. They're like, there are people saying this, Amy, but what you're thinking is X, Y, Z. Am I right? And she's like, that is right, X, Y, Z. But
Like a
at one
script.
point, they're like, hey, what do you think about the thought of you trading Mike Vrabel? I'm like, did that ever come up? Which is something we've toyed with on this show, like trading coaches. I didn't know these guys have no trade clauses. I did not know that, which from a labor standpoint, that's kind of fucked up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what makes coaches different than players in that they can, say, I don't want to get traded here. We had Sean Merriman on last week. They waived him in L.A. and he's got to go to Buffalo. He almost retired because he didn't want to go to Buffalo. Okay, Mike Vrabel on a couple levels probably wasn't down with this. Okay, but what Amy's thought process was, she said, we didn't want to, have to go to the back of the line, and we didn't want to have to waste 3 weeks trying to find a trade partner for a coach, which makes a lot of sense to me, right? But then 30 seconds later, they're asking her, what's the number one thing you've learned hiring coaches? And she says, cast a wide net and take your time. And that's a sentiment that's been echoed by a lot of owners when you listen to them. It's like, we're going to take our time, which is a load of bullshit, right? They know who they want to hire. I'm pretty sure. That's why the Rooney rule's here, right? Like, these coaches know who they want to, these GMs and these owners, they know who they want in the building. Ideally, there's some people who knock your socks off in interviews. But I will say this. I don't think there's a group of people in America worse at hiring the most important asset outside of the quarterback for a business that's worth so much as owners are when it comes to hiring head coaches. And I think the thing they miss on so often is the vibe. It's this. Like, how do you not know this guy's a douche nozzle? I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but I'm saying I've seen coaches where I'm like, how do you not know? Oh yeah, it's because you live in a fucking 70,000 square foot condominium with 3 people at your beck and call all day, and you have no real friends. I'm not saying all owners are like that, but I would imagine you're so siloed, dude. Like,
That's why I love the Commanders bringing in Bob Myers. It's like, hey, this isn't my job. I need to find somebody smart to do this job.
and I also think Josh Harris seems like he's been around human beings a little bit. And from talking to people that's been around Josh Harris, he's not like some robot that doesn't know. How do
Right.
you know who's going to do it in a room full of guys that you're nothing like? And so I think having owners that have that emotional intelligence and that delegation skill really important. I'm not making a determination on Amy Adams Strunk. What I am saying though is that these are tough decisions. The guy you just let walk out the door, there's nobody that has the it factor more than him. So how are you going to follow this guy? And you have to be intentional about how you follow him because, as you know, it's hard to fool a room full of grown men. And one thing, that Vrabel didn't have to worry about doing was fooling people. He was who he was, and people respected him for it. So the next guy you bring in cannot be a Brandon Staley. And by that I mean cannot have a shtick. You know what I'm saying? You got to be whoever you are, and you got to know ball. And so I don't know if they want to go offense, they want to go defense, whatever it is. But I thought it was interesting her talking about that trade and not wanting to go to the back of the line by way of losing 3 weeks, juxtaposed to 30 seconds later, which said, we got to be patient. Now, I think what happened with that trade is, because these guys have no trade clauses, Mike Vrabel's like, take that trade and roll it up like a newspaper and stick it up your ass. Okay? Not
and
to Amy,
admitting that, yeah,
but to the
and
organization.
admitting that he has trade value also makes the decision to fire him look more dubious.
Well, it's admitting he has. It's the weirdest thing in the world. We always talk about these quarterback trades or these head coach trades, and they've happened. But boy, isn't it weird when you think it through? You've got to consent to where you're traded as a coach. How does that conversation go? Hey, fuck you. We're going to trade you, and the place you're going to go, and you're going to say yes, is going to send us capital.
Yeah.
So then it's going to be harder for you to win where we send you. No coach is agreeing to that. And so I'm pretty sure what happened is Mike Vrabel was like, roll it up like a newspaper. Okay? I want to grab some of that Vaseline over there in the training room and shove it up your ass, Titans, because I am not getting traded. No fucking way. And that's how I would be if I was Mike Vrabel. And he strikes me as that type of guy, and I love him for it. I hope he ends up in New England. I hope here's another one. Maybe here's what I think really happened. I think prior to the trade thing, I think that was a short conversation, and he knew it would be. But I think he probably said one of two things. I'm not ceding any personnel control. Whatever he had now, I'm not giving any of it away. To me, that's an unknown commodity or quantity. I don't know how much he had. The other thing is, I bet you, if I had to guess, he was like, all right, you want to change something? I want to bring Arthur Smith back. Or something like that. You know, I think there was some negotiation. I don't think it was she walked in and said, hey, you're fired. I think it was some ultimatum one way or another, and it didn't happen. It's not like breaking up. It's not like breaking up with your girlfriend. You know, you have these ultimatums like, I'm leaving. You know, you leave, and then the person leaves, and they come back like, you're gone, bro. It's over. So that's the thing about throwing ultimatums out to Mike Vrabel.
That's the way it seemed, that it was a quick decision, because Will Levis even said when on his exit interview was that Vrabel said in a couple days, reach out and we'll talk about, you know, the offseason. We'll talk about how everything went. We'll recap. We'll regroup. And so it seemed like it took him off guard as well.
Well, it was surprising, but Mike Vrabel got fired. I guess it wasn't something we didn't speculate on. Like, you know, we wondered, but that's a good coach that's just joined the Freedom Caucus, okay? And he's all out of newspapers. So, guys, he's ready to coach some team hard.
Perfect.
And I think he'd be great. And I think if he got that New England job, how about an Arthur Smith and Mike Vrabel reunion, okay? And you know what I think that'd be the perfect situation for? A bridge and a drafted player. Because as we've watched Jordan Love, I kind of wonder if the Jordan Love thing's going to change the way people – I'm not saying he's the first guy, but Mahomes sat a while, okay?
Draft and stash.
Draft and stash, man. You know, like these guys, I really do want to do a study of every guy that hit over the last like 30 years and figure out what's the commonality in the process for these guys. And the longer guys wait, I think it's better. And I think like if you had an assurance, if I was a head coach and I was Mike Vrabel and I had the coordinator I liked, I would go somewhere if I was picking within range of one of these guys everybody thinks is special, but I look at them like lotto tickets. You know, I would say, hey, well, then here's what we're going to do. We're going to draft a bridge, and we're going to sit Caleb Williams or Drake May for a year, at least. And we're going to try to be competitive in the division right now and increase the vibes. And when this guy's ready, he's ready. Because to me, it's not about maximizing the rookie deal. It's about protecting the asset. Because if that asset is protected, we're not talking about a rookie deal. We're talking about a decade with a franchise. You know, and that's how you find your guy.